Steve Zeltzer with Pacifica, and I'm with Chris Silvera, who's Secretary-Treasurer of IBT Local 808, and he had helped organize a rally in New York to support the railway workers. And this rally was the first union rally, actually, union-sponsored rally, held in the United States to support the railroad workers and their right to strike. So welcome to our show, Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Chris, why don't you talk about why you and others organized a rally and why it's important that other workers around the country join together to support these railroad workers?
So, we got a call Sunday. I got a call from the December 12th movement people, Omawale Clay, and he says, hey, Chris, we got to do something. But let me give you a little backdrop before that. Before that, we have a coalition of railroad unions on Metro North. And I brought up the topic back in November. And because, as a matter of fact, you and I had the discussion. I told you we were going to do this. Well, let me tell you something. If a rat peed on cotton, it would break your eardrums from 5 miles away. That's how quiet they got. And it was like, well, we represent guys on freedom. We already voted yes. So nonetheless, I get the call, and we reached out to Larry Holmes from Workers' Assembly Against Racism, Charles Jenkins from TWU Local 100, and he's also the president of the CBTU chapter here in New York. And we just had a conversation. We all agreed, picked a time in front of Grand Central Station yesterday at 5 o'clock, and we had about 150, maybe 200 people that turned out.
What was said by the workers there? What was the sentiment of workers at that rally?
The sentiment of the workers was an understanding that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party had failed the working class. And there was a certain and extreme disappointment in the Democratic Party, as they tend to like to present themselves as being worker-friendly. And I believe you could take away from it that the spirit for a national general strike was in the air. You see the New York Times, they're going on strike. When you see 25 pilots in uniform from Southwest Airlines come and participate, it tells you that the working class understands they're getting beat up by both parties and something needs to be done.
Good evening, everyone. We did not know we were going to be speaking tonight, so we'll keep this short. I am Brian, and I am with my fellow brothers and sisters from SWAPA, Southwest Airlines Pilots Association. We're here to stand with you in a show of support so that you understand that as another work group, another labor group, under the Railway Labor Act, we see what's happening. We support you. We want you to get what you need to get and get where you need to be. And know that you are not alone. We're watching and we support you. Thank you.
To take away the right of our brothers and sisters to strike is a violation of their human rights. To take away their right to be sick so that they can speed up and exploit us more is a violation of our human rights. So we came tonight to make a statement. We saw our airline pilots were here in solidarity to make a statement. And so the program tonight is one of solidarity with our brothers and sisters who fight every day to transport and deliver you and goods and services across this country, who have been dealt a terrible injustice.
The ground is fertile now to make something happen that will bring long-term gain for the working class.
And the idea that the U.S. government, the Democrats and Republicans, would vote to send the railroad workers back to work with a agreement with no sick leave and using the Railroad Labor Act as the rule, it seems like they want slave labor.
Yes, but in all defense, the first letdown of the workers came from their own unions who, having this power, go to meetings with Joe Biden and allow Joe Biden and Secretary Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Transportation to beat them down to protect the party for their midterm election and elicit nothing in return. And so that's the first letdown, because they had the power to say to Joe Biden, say, listen, I understand you got a midterm, and I understand you're about to get blown out of the water, but if we don't have these sick days, so be it. What do I care, right? So they let their workers down. That's the first letdown, right? So this is why rank and file have to become involved and start to demand things, and not just demand from their leadership, but change the leadership. If the leadership continues to come back with inferior collective bargaining agreements, then they're let down by the Democrats/Republicans. They knew it was going to fail. Once they split the bill in two, one go back to work, 1 7 sick days, I knew then it was going to fail. It was intended to fail because both parties served the boss.
Why is it that the unions, the Teamsters included, there was no publicity, there was no national political education campaign about the conditions of the railroad workers prior to this situation developing?
So, you know, the BLET and the BMWED are affiliated with the Teamsters, but they run their own ship. And they don't like the idea of other people getting involved. They're spread out. I mean, there's a combination of issues which could be overcome with some effort, don't mind you. But the workers are upset. And I tell you, if somebody got up and made the right moves, I think if our general president got up and said, my God, man, this is not going to happen on my watch, that there would be something that had to move.
And the pilots joining, it seems like a lot of workers now are fed up with the situation, and they're against the wall. They feel they have to go out.
Well, yes. I mean, I think so. There comes a point when the entire system has told you there is no place for you. There's not enough money in the economy to send money to Ukraine, none for you. To send money to Afghanistan and Iraq and billions and trillions, and none for the working class, right? Where there's a refusal to tax these wealthy corporations, tax these venture capitalists that now own these railroads. There's a point where you have to resist unjust laws, unjust bills, whether it's coming from Congress, the mayor, or whomever. And this is the time for us to do something that John Lewis liked to talk about, called getting into some good trouble. And this is time for good trouble.
And I understand some of the speakers at the rally also called for a workers' party, a labor party, so working people have a political alternative. Was that brought up?
The workers need one. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There is no question that, again, that the time is right to build. I mean, nobody's going to just jump off a ship into the ocean, but we have to start rapidly building a workers' party owned and controlled by the unions, independent of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
And you had this rally. I understand that the SMART and Teamsters are calling for a rally on December the 13th. How can workers around the country spread this out and build a general solidarity movement for railroad workers and other workers? In California, there are 48,000 UAW, UC workers who are fighting for a living wage and also for housing. It seems like there's a generalized condition with workers are fighting for survival.
There is a generalized condition. I'm going to try to reach out and find out from these smart people what it is that they want to do and see how we can get this thing going here on our side of the fence. But I think ultimately there has to be, and quite rapidly, workers need to walk off the job and head to Washington, D.C. and say, we're not leaving here until there's some real change now.
And it sounds like these workers, or railroad workers now, they've been poked in the eye so much now. And there are no replacement workers because they've cut down the number of workers to the bare bones. So if they do walk out or go out, there's nobody to replace them.
So the cost, and this is where the math gets The cost to give them the 7 sick days is $320 million or so, out of a loss of a one-day strike of $2 billion. It seems to me that it makes sense to make a settlement, because the settlement would really end up being about 2% of total profits, and the railroads are running at 50% profit year over year. It is criminal. It is inhumane. Let me tell you something. These guys are working in snowstorms. They got to clean the switches. In the hottest of summer, in the rain, peak weather. The number one killer of railroad workers is silica dust. Dust from the gravel that they use to hold the tracks together. And this is the number one killer, because as they dump stone and what they call regulating the tracks and what have you, camping, dust is being stirred up all the time, being inhaled, and it never leaves your lungs. Okay? And in these conditions, and in a post-pandemic, so think of people getting COVID and having no sick days. And so you're out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on how hard COVID hit you, and you didn't get one sick day? Not 1 day's pay? Not 1 day's pay?
And while the U.S. government is spending another $35 billion for the war in Ukraine, that's what the Biden administration and Blinken are pushing for. They're saying that people that have COVID or cannot get tests, that people being charged, poor people can't afford to get tests in the midst of a pandemic?
No, because over the years, they have cut taxes on the wealthy. So that income stream that would come from people making over $1 million a year, making over $500,000 a year and up, that income stream has been choked off. So with the dramatic demand for profit, there is not enough money to spread around. So we don't have enough money for the military-industrial complex versus healthcare. We don't have enough money for the military-industrial complex versus clean drinking water in Flint or Jackson, Mississippi, and so many other communities that suffer from old. I mean, just think of how old the pipes in New York are. You know, Boston, Chicago, some of the oldest cities in this country. I mean, just think of the amount of work that could be generated from saying we're going to have a whole infrastructure rebuild.
Well,
the jobs that would be created.
Well, they're saying apparently you can have guns and butter, but there is no butter for working people now in this country.
There's a choice between guns or butter. The butter is out because Warren Buffett got the butter. Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett on November 22nd made $1.3 billion in 1 day. That could have paid for 3 or 4 years. 1 day, 4 years of sick days for every railroad worker in the country. Now tell me that ain't criminal.
So how can workers get involved? Should they go to their unions and start rallying together and build united fronts for the railroad workers?
They have to go to their unions and force their hand, not ask. Tell them, we will not accept this, and you will not be here. We ain't waiting for the next election. You're out of here tomorrow. If you don't do something to address this problem now. I mean, like I said, there comes that point where, listen, African Americans got the right to vote without having the right to vote. Women got the right to vote without having the right to vote. You have to create the pressure to move this country forward, to move this society forward. You can't wait for that. All those heads of real unions, all of them have sick days. If they get sick tomorrow, they're getting paid. But their workers, their membership don't have it.
Yeah, it's a situation that is unacceptable. That is very clear. So I want to thank you for joining us. We've been talking with Chris Silvera. He's Secretary-Treasurer of IBT Local 808, representing railroad workers in New York, and talking about a rally that was held for the railroad workers and for all workers in this country, the right to sick pay and the right really to survive in this situation.
Brother brother. Thank you for everything that you do.